Ask and ye shall receive. Yesterday, we made a video talking about the lack of transfer portal additions for Texas in the offseason. Today, the Longhorns pick up a transfer portal commitment. What will Hero Kanu bring to the Longhorns in 2025 and potentially beyond? We'll discuss on today's edition of the BK Show. What's up, guys and gals? Welcome in to another edition of the BK Show. This is your one-stop shop for Texas Longhorns content on YouTube. I'm your host, BK Brad Kellner. I'm sure most of you know by now, but early this morning, I'm talking early this morning, the Texas Longhorns picked up their fifth transfer portal commit of the offseason, landing defensive lineman Hero Kanu from the Ohio State University. Kanu took a visit to Austin on Sunday. He was only here for a couple of hours before leaving town for some other visits. He went to Florida on Monday. He went to Georgia on Tuesday. But ultimately, today, on Wednesday, he decides to commit to Texas. Must have had a great time for those few hours he was here on Sunday. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say Hero Kanu is the first hero that Texas football has ever had. Fantastic name, one that you don't hear often in any era of college football. Kanu is 6'4", 315 pounds. He's an interesting story. He was a top 130 recruit nationally in the class of 2022. He actually grew up in Germany, was a great club soccer player over there, and didn't start playing football, American football, until late 2020. He moved to California in 2020 after being found by PPI Recruits founder Brandon Collier. And Brandon makes a living finding potential football players overseas, mainly in Europe, to try to bring to America to get them paid. And now college athletes get paid, and Hero Kanu is one of those success stories from Brandon Collier. But this is a guy who, again, did not play football until late 2020. He moves to California thinking he's going to start playing that year. Well, COVID happens. California postpones its high school football season to the spring of 2021. So really, Kanu didn't play his first organized football game until 4 years ago. Obviously played 2 seasons in 2021 because he played in the spring, and then he played the regular one in the fall. And in that span of just one calendar year, this guy did enough to pick up some big offers. Now, he was battle tested in California, went up against teams like Mater Dei and St. John Bosco, some of the top football rich schools in SoCal, schools that, if you keep up with recruiting, I'm sure you've heard of a lot over the years. But he played well enough to pick up a ton of offers, including one from Texas in his final year of high school. Texas tried, but unfortunately didn't get very close to landing Kanu. He took 4 official visits in 2021. Texas wasn't one of them. Notre Dame, Oklahoma, Georgia, and obviously Ohio State, where he ended up. Those were the 4 spots that got OVs from Kanu. He ends up going to the Buckeyes, spends 3 years here. But Texas, a few years later, after trying to get this kid out of high school, they're able to lock him up through the portal. So, what is Texas getting? Well, how about a quote from Brandon Collier himself? He told Hank South from Horns 24/7, quote, "He's a kid that is going to come in and compete for a starting role, as he left a starting role at Ohio State. He will bring that championship pedigree to Austin, and he knows what that looks like. He's 6'5", 315 pounds. He's a strong kid, and the play style at Texas will fit him much better scheme-wise. Texas is getting a kid that will make a big impact right away, and he will be able to replace a lot of the talented guys up front," end quote. And obviously, Texas is losing a lot of talented guys up front. Kanu's a unique skill set. Once again, 310, 315 pounds. He's big enough to play on the interior of a defensive line, but he's also pretty quick. You could maybe line him up along the edge. He had an equal amount of reps, about 60 reps on the left side of the defensive line at Ohio State this past season, 49 snaps along the right side, 3 technique, 4 technique, 5 technique. He's a guy who can play in odd fronts and even fronts. He should be able to play multiple positions along the Texas defensive line. Now, Texas is a lot deeper off the edge than they are in the teeth of that defensive line room, right? You've got Ethan Burke, you've got Colin Simmons, you've got Trey Moore, you've got Colton Vasek. You've got more proven commodities on the outside than you do on the inside. But it seems like Kanu is a guy who can line up a little bit off the edge if you need him to. Solid against the run, shows the occasional flash against the pass, more of an inside pass rusher there. And his overall grade on Pro Football Focus, not great, just a 57.9, but he got a lot better in the last 6 games of the season. Had a grade of 79.5 in Ohio State's blowout victory over Indiana, had a 66.4 grade in the Rose Bowl victory against Oregon, had a 63 grade against Texas in the Cotton Bowl game that we don't like talking about very much. But this guy got better as the year progressed, and that's understandable, right? This dude is still a work in progress because he just started playing football like 4 years ago. So he's got the body type, he's got the athleticism, but he's still a little bit of a ball of clay that with the right coaching can hopefully get better during his time in Austin. And he's got 2 years of eligibility left, right? So he'll for sure be here in 2025. Maybe he's here in 2026 as well. If you look at the numbers for Hero Kanu, not great. Not a ton of stats. Just 14 career tackles in his 3 seasons in Columbus, only 4 this past season. I will say this, one of those 4 came in the Cotton Bowl against Texas. So the fact that Ohio State trusted Hero Kanu to play in a college football playoff semifinal game has to be a good sign, right? It's not like this guy logged all of his stats against garbage teams in non-conference play. This guy was getting some important run for Ohio State on their run to a national championship. So the coaches trusted him to play for Ohio State. And just because he didn't start for the Buckeyes doesn't mean he's not a good player. I mean, look at the guys he was behind. Tyleik Williams, probably going to be a top 50 pick in the draft in April. Ty Hamilton will get drafted as well in a couple of months. I mean, look at Texas's situation. Like Vernon Broughton and Alfred Collins, those guys didn't have a ton of numbers before this year because, well, not because they were bad players, but because they were playing behind some NFL dudes and Byron Murphy, who was the second defensive player picked last year, and then Tavondre Sweat, who was the Outland Trophy winner, the Lombardi Trophy winner, the Everything Trophy winner. So, yeah, those guys were really good. Wasn't a lot of space for Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton to play. Maybe that's the case with Hero Kanu, excuse me. Maybe he'll get more of an opportunity at Texas than he did at Ohio State. The third transfer defensive line pickup for the Longhorns. Obviously, Cole Brevard coming in from Purdue, Travis Shaw coming in from North Carolina. I'm curious to see what the playing time looks like, right? Like, I think my initial thought is Kanu is probably not going to play as much as the other 2 portal pieces that Texas picked up on the defensive line because he just doesn't have the college football or really the football experience that those other 2 dudes have. I mean, Brevard played almost 400 snaps for the Boilermakers this past season. He's got more than 1,000 career snaps in Division I college football. Travis Shaw has more than 620 career snaps in college football. Meanwhile, Kanu, 90 snaps in 2023, 123 snaps in 2024. So just hasn't played as much as those other guys. So I think it's safe to assume that Brevard and Shaw are probably going to be higher on the depth chart when we get to the start of spring ball in a couple of weeks than Kanu is. But I will say this, Texas had to beat Florida and Georgia to land this kid, meaning he's not coming without a cost. And defensive linemen go for a lot in the portal these days. And we know Georgia's been heavy in the portal. We know Florida's been heavy in the portal. Those teams have money. Those teams have been spending it too. So Hero Kanu is not coming here for free. If Texas is going to be spending 6 figures, maybe close to 7 figures to land this guy, which feels like a fair ballpark estimate, they might want 200 to 300 snaps instead of the 123 that Kanu had for Ohio State this past season. So he's got a chance to be a big part of the rotation. And I will give Kenny Baker and Steve Sarkisian and Pete Kwiatkowski and everybody on the Longhorns coaching staff some credit because going into the offseason, this was without question the biggest problem for Texas from a roster standpoint. They only had 2 scholarship returnees on the defensive line with Alex January, who hasn't done a whole lot, and Melvin Hills, who hasn't done a whole lot during their Texas careers. It was just those 2 guys. Texas has now added 3 transfer portal pieces. And of course, they signed 3 high school recruits in the number 1 class in the country, the class of 2025. All of those guys are early enrollees. Justice Terry, the consensus 5-star, who we all believe is going to compete for a starting spot, and maybe we'll do enough in the offseason to get a starting spot. You want him to do it Colin Simmons did last year and what Anthony Hill did 2 years ago. That's come in and make a major, major impact as a true freshman. You've got him, you've got Josiah Sharma, you've got Myron Charles, all three of those guys, 4 or 5-star recruits. And again, bringing in three guys with college experience, three guys who have at least been in college football for 3 years, varying levels of snaps, varying levels of production, but guys who have been playing this level of football for 3 seasons. That is big time stuff right there. And going back to Kenny Baker, I think you trust Kenny Baker. I know he's only been here for 1 season, but he was able to unlock the potential of both Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton. Remember, both of those guys, especially Alfred Collins, right? Because he was the 5-star, the local kid out of Bastrop. He was expected to be a monster at Texas. And we saw flashes of great play from him in his first 3 seasons on the 40 acres, but he didn't put it all together with Bo Davis coaching him up. Well, out goes Bo Davis. Everyone's a little worried because Bo Davis had a great resume and had a bunch of success at Texas and at other stops. He goes and takes the gig at LSU. In comes Kenny Baker, who's an assistant defensive line coach for the Dolphins. Nobody has any idea what the Horns are going to get from him. And yeah, he unlocks Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton, turning both of those guys into draft picks. Those guys were monsters for Texas this season. And what was a huge concern following the departures of T. Sweat and Byron Murphy ended up being a strength of Texas because that D line was still one of the best in the country. And it allowed Texas to have one of the best defenses in the country, too. So I've got faith that Kenny Baker is going to develop these guys and help them get the most out of their skill sets. And hopefully he can unlock Hero Kanu. Because once again, top 130 player nationally in the class of 2022, a 4-star. This guy, you don't get offers from Ohio State and Oklahoma and Georgia and Notre Dame and Texas if there isn't a chance that you can play. The fact that all of those schools and more were interested out of high school, and the fact that Georgia and Florida and others were interested now, even though he hasn't played a ton in college, that leads you to believe that there's something there with that ball of clay, and Kenny Baker might be the guy, might be the artist to turn it into something special. So I've got faith in Kenny Baker finding a way to make this defensive line work. And I'll give Kenny Baker a lot of credit for the job that he, and again, this coaching staff, with a little cap tip to the Texas One Fund, has done to bring in a bunch of players. I mean, 6 new defensive linemen. The Longhorns needed quality and quantity. I think they've got both. We'll see. I think this is all they're going to add before spring ball begins. Obviously, the transfer portal window will open up again after the spring. So we'll see if Texas is in the market for a defensive line after that. But I think there's a good chance Texas is going to roll with this when they take the field on August 30th against the aforementioned Ohio State Buckeyes. And hey, how about this bonus nug? Hero Kanu played for Ohio State last year. Maybe he could give the Longhorns some pointers, right? Some tips, some strategies. He can do a little Connor Stallions work to help Texas get a road victory to start off the 2025 season. Who knows? Jim Knowles' defensive coordinator's gone. Chip Kelly might be gone. That might be stupid, but I'm bringing it up anyways because I really want Texas to win that game and get some revenge for what happened at the Cotton Bowl a few weeks ago. So there you go. Texas adds Hero Kanu. I assume the first hero in program history. A great job by Kenny Baker and everybody involved. Big time get for Texas, a guy who will be in the defensive line rotation and can maybe make a bigger impact than some folks expect during his 1 or 2 years in Austin. I want to hear from y'all. Your thoughts on the pickup. Does Texas need more on the defensive line? Where else would you like to see Texas add in the transfer portal before the offseason is all said and done? Comment below with your thoughts. Hey, if you made it this far, please give this video a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Again, this is your one-stop shop for Texas Longhorns content on YouTube. Appreciate the continued love and support. Remember, when you watch the BK show, you rule. See y'all tomorrow.